Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm super excited. And I was letting everyone know that, and here's Giz. Just
Oh, so cute.
So that's Gizmo. He's my co-host. He can't be left out. Sometimes he'll go off screen, but he's always here and he's sort of blessing us. Gizmo actually also takes his probiotics every day. But I already had a chance to kind of talk a little bit about you. Just you know that you are the co-founder and co-CEO of Seed Health, and just dived in just a little bit because I wanted to really give you your time to talk about everything that you want to talk about. So I usually come on a little early and talk a little bit about our guests, but you've had such a beautiful journey, and I really connect. So first of all, thank you again for being here, and it's I'm so honored to be able to just welcome another fellow female founder in the wellness space. So I love that. And just kind of looking at your journey, I saw that, you're also inspired from your mother's journey in health, which resonates so much with me because I do what I do because of my dad's journey with cancer and also my mom. So if you wouldn't mind just sort of introducing yourself to this audience of over 700 people, just a little bit about your journey and the inspiration to Seed Health, the creation of that, and then what you guys are doing, and then we'll dive into the myths. But I wanted people to kind of meet you.
Absolutely. First, yes, you're the best. You're the best interviewer. You're like, you make people feel so welcome and comfortable right away. Go to your house for dinner.
We have to do it. If we're in LA, we'll have to do it. We'll set it up after this.
I would love that. Well, first of all, before I get started, just to say a little note about your dog, which is, we just posted this last week on Seed, but just, I don't know if you know, but dogs are good for your microbiome. They cohabitate with pets, actually have more diverse microbiomes, which is really interesting, and another reason, of course, to justify having a lovely animal to share.
Thanks, kids.
So yeah, for me, it's interesting. Kind of what you said. I mean, I think everybody's journey started when they got here at about zero. But my work journey, or my work, really started in high school. I lost my mom to pancreatic cancer when I was 16. But it was like really the first moment. And I think maybe this resonates with you based on the way that you kind of articulated the introduction, is that when you're exposed to what it means for the body to not be healthy at a very young age, and you watch it, like, you really see what that. It's interesting because your grandparents always say, at least you have your health, or at least I have my health. And like, when you're really young, you don't take that, you don't fully understand that,
right?
And I think for me, that was an up close experience of what it really does look like. And my mom was young, so it was like, of course, a really visceral experience. But what it really ingrained in me, first, it was my first experience ever researching clinical trials. And, my mom was doing everything from there were like Reiki people and like every modality, because what you find out, no matter how much how much somebody believes in science or medicine or has different methodologies, what you find out is that when there's pathology, or when you believe that you may not live, you will literally try anything.
Yeah.
And I run a science company. And so, of course, my job is to figure out, how you reconcile that, right? Because people, truthfully, when someone's really sick, it doesn't matter what science says.
Yeah.
I did really understand was that the search to understand how science does make it to humans, and that finding clinical trials. And that really was like my beginning of thinking of like, how does science find, like, how does it make its way to humans? How do you do anything with it? And also, how do you make decisions for your health and your body? And so I actually didn't end up studying science, although I've been a lifelong, I guess, biology nerd and physiology nerd. But I really actually started building, my whole career was in the intersection of storytelling, tech, and design. And I built a number of consumer tech companies and things I'm very, very proud of. Mm-hmm. But I certainly wouldn't say that they're the things that I felt like were had purpose and meaning in the way it does. Yeah. And I think I always knew I'd end up in the body somehow. but I always was a very big skeptic. And I think maybe going through the experience of my mom made me pretty skeptical too. Open-minded, but skeptical. Optimistically cynical, I guess is how they say it. And I think that I knew that if I was ever going to be in health, it had to be in something that I felt was kind of going to fundamentally change the way we know everything. Like, and genomics did that a little, like the human genome. And I think that was like one of the first windows that really was like, wow, there's another way to understand our body, to place in time and history, in the way we live and the way we make choices. But I always joke with people, we sequence the human genome, but it's not like you go to Whole Foods and you for your genome. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I had a miscarriage and I was running a consumer tech company I'd started. I was very, very proud of, as I said, but like, I don't actually, it's funny, it's mobile commerce. I actually don't like shop. I'm not like a big shopper, but it was funny, we launched Apple Pay with Apple and there's all these like sexy things, like women in tech and all. And I had a miscarriage and I was like, it was just a very grounding moment to say like, this life that I'm living is just not viable. It's just not like I know how to build communities. I know how to build technology. I know how to like build brands. I know how to run teams. So like, then you're like, you have to, at a certain moment you say like, what do I do with all of that? And I think I always say for women, there's kind of two ways women find their way to their bodies. It's through pathology or pregnancy. You get sick or not. and that's like how and other than that, you don't learn how your vagina works. You don't learn about very critical things about biology. You don't learn about nutrition. There's no way that even by the way, in medical school, they also don't teach nutrition. They don't speak about the So for me, it really was when I was pregnant and I was like, whatever. And I started to learn about the microbiome just because I am a little bit of a nerd. So it was a little early. And I met my co-founder who had already known that he wanted to spend the rest of his life working on bacteria and microbes. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're pregnant, you start to, first of all, feel this stewardship towards like this little human you're creating and building. But you also wonder, like, what are the choices I'm making that impact this human? Yeah. I'll finish the rest of the story and get to the seed part very quickly, but just you have the full. No. I want to hear we want to hear all of it. Okay, cool. For me, I was like, wow, when you're pregnant, the world, first of all, you get so much unsolicited advice and information. Yes. As somebody who knows a good amount about medicine and science, like most of it's not true or right. Doesn't matter as you learn in human health, like it doesn't matter about being right. And as I said, not always what science says, but I did really understand how much learning and understanding is in itself an act of self-care, and that like education. And actually we can get to it later in the session, but actually they're starting to study that education as a treatment for like IBS and like autoimmune. And they're starting to see that just education alone is a treatment. So that's really, we can park that for a second. Oh, yes. Yes. That's where I resonate with you too. Yeah. That is absolutely a vertical in my practice. Yeah. Just the education part. It is true. And that doesn't have to cost anything either, which I think is really important to remember. And so for me, it was just, I met my co-founder. He's a phenomenal scientific mind, but also a beautiful translator of science. We both found our way to the microbiome, me through my pregnancy and my curiosity, him through academia and like understanding like where a lot of the science was going to move. But then, when you start to understand, that's where the word seed comes from. So seeding is actually the biological process by which an infant is first exposed to microbes, which majority of that happens at birth. So if it's a vaginal birth, they're literally bathed in microbes. Yeah. They go in their nose, their mouth, and then those microbes go in and they begin to form your GI system and your immune system. And those microbes you start to train them. They start to get exposed to different things. They start to become the sensors of saying like, is this good for me? Is this bad for me? And learning the world. And so they co-evolve. And of course you can't digest food without them. A third of the carbohydrates in breast milk are not digestible by the human part of a baby, only by the microbes that they get. And so when you start to learn about that, like, there's microbes on our nipple that co-evolved on our nipple just to help a baby digest lactose. So it's like, you start to understand this like circularity, like the microbes from your vagina go in, and then the microbes in breast milk, and then the carbohydrates in breast milk only are the fertilizer for the microbes. And when you start to understand that, I was like, wow, like, and that's just, by the way, the tip of the iceberg. Hopefully I'll be able to touch on a few other items today. But like, that to me was like 38 trillion of these things live in and on us. 3 to 5 pounds of our body, not human. We never knew about them before this research started.
Yeah.
And they play critical in exchange for a warm place to live and a nutrient source, which we give them. They perform critical functions in our body that we could not do without them. And so that was my aha moment. And I was like, I could spend the rest of my life understanding bacteria and what this invisible world offers us. And then on top of that, not just understanding it, and as you said, probiotics, starting to understand how you use specific microbes to impact human, and in our case, also environmental health. And so that was like our journey. And to your point about education, so much of what we do is not just like, yes, we do incredible research. I'm happy to speak about that too, but we try and use this invisible world as a way to like, you know, when you go to the optometrist and they kind of like click in all the lenses and then they finally like, you can see, we try and use the microbiome and we're just like, you can see the matrix too.
Yes.
And you can then use that lens to say like, what should I eat? What should I take? Should I take this course of antibiotics or should I not? Do I need it? Is it indiscriminate use or is it actually essential? Should I douche? Should I put this on my skin? Should I this artificial sweeteners that impact my gut microbiome? Should I? And it creates like, I always say it's like Minority Report. It's like you walk around the world with like this new lens and new way to see. And so we try and use the brand and our education to do that. And I'm excited to share more of that with you. And I'm so sorry that was like the most rambling long answer.
No, it was wonderful because no, truly, I mean, I think it's so important for people to really understand or at least get some sense of understanding and background when it comes to a founder's journey. I think it really, you know, and I obviously have my own, I love your products, you know, I love your product and you know that already way before we even got a chance to meet here. It's something that I have been recommending and I use myself, which I share with my community. But there's a connection, you know, and as science-based as you are, and I love how much you nerd out because I do too, but there's also that which you cannot see, you know, that energy, which connects everything, and knowing the story behind it, you know, getting that history and that background, that is to me just as important as the clinical trials that you do. And so, and I think in my community as well, because they come on and they stay on and they want to hear that journey. So it's so important. So thank you for sharing that. So, you know, I would like to kind of dive into Seed and what you're doing, because I did have a lot of questions. Every once in a while will promote, you know, a brand, but really that I really believe in it. I stand by it. And I know I talk a lot about the gut biome, microbiome. I talk a lot about probiotics and bacteria, but not to the extent, you know, that you can share with us, because my knowledge is, you know, just a percentage of yours. And so I think it'd be really great if you could explain to everyone, like, why Seed, you know, what the difference is, so that they can understand, because and again, I've been talking too long, so I'll just stop myself in a minute. But at least in my practice, educating people, giving them that information is, as you said, what gives them the tools to make decisions outside of just that one point, you know, that one touch point. And that's what's worked for with my clients, for example. It's just once they know why they're using this particular product, you know, they stick with it, and then they take that knowledge and they can apply it other places. So,
sorry.
I think we.
Oh no!
Can you
hear me?
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Oh,
yes.
sorry.
And to answer, just to address some of the audience, I just want to say thank you guys for being here. For those of you guys who joined on a couple minutes late, we're talking to Ara Katz, who is the co-founder and co-CEO of Seed Health. And you tuned in just in time, if you only just now tuned in, because she's going to dive into what Seed is. And for those of you who asked if this will be saved, if you have to jump off early, yes. The lives are always saved. We clean them up and we put them on replay. We'll put them on Facebook and YouTube and here on Instagram, on IGTV as well. So no worries if you have to jump off and go back to a work meeting. We'll have everything for you. So thank you so much. And Ara, go ahead. I don't want to keep this up to you.
Well, you know, one of the things my team says, and I think as a company, we always like to say we're terrible salespeople, because I can tell you why Seed. But I think the most important thing first, and I think you nailed this when you said this, is that one of the things we care the most about is that whether or not you ever buy our product, or any of our innovations, like in across our probiotics and things that we'll be launching, what I care about is that you kind of go out into the world knowing like what at least to look for. So like what we love to do, and I think that as someone who loves education, like let's start with a glossary. It's like we'll be working from the same language, which I think is incredible. By the way, if you look at the news and everything over the last couple of years, would be a huge service to the whole world if we all just had a glossary, a dictionary that we all somewhat agree to. So let's start with probiotics.
Yes.
So our chief scientist, who I have the privilege of working with, is the most published researcher in probiotics in the world. He likes to remind me that every time we are all writing a paper, or our scientists are writing papers with him. I think he's like 534 plus papers just on probiotics.
Wow.
He authored the scientific definition of the term probiotic for in the UN in early 2000s, and then they had a panel that did a slight revision, I think in 2011. In the United States, the term probiotic is not regulated, which means you have probiotic tortilla chips, probiotic chocolate bars, probiotic pillowcases, probiotic house cleaning products, probiotic tampons, probiotic clothing. We have a Slack channel that shows the ludicrousy of things that are probiotic.
Yes.
None of those qualify as a probiotic. Of course, when you get into things like kombucha, kimchi, fermented foods, other things that have been fermented or have undergone lactic acid fermentation, that's of course where we need to kind of like dive in a little bit. The scientific definition reads, and I will kind of like I'll give you the nerdy version, and then we'll a live microorganism, which means in this case a bacteria, microbe, that has been administered in an adequate dosage. That means the amount that was studied in a human clinical trial that confers a benefit to the host. That's you. What that means is it's a live microbe, and live is really important piece of it, which means that to do the job that it's been studied to do, it does it in a live state. Now there's a whole other, I won't get into the nerdiness of this. There are a whole field of probiotics, which is the study of dead microbes and what dead microbes may do when they move their way through the body, and how they may signal to other microbes and cells, even dead. And maybe to date, that's like still early. But I will just say, when you hear people say things like survivability or how many live organisms, that is to date still true. But there's nuance to it. A live microorganism, and then so what that means is that a very specific microbe has been studied to do something in the human body. That's what qualifies as a probiotic. Now, things like kombucha, kimchi, fermented foods, those all have bacteria. Those microbes were selected, just like if you're a wine connoisseur, like you understand that fermentation is an art form. Those microbes were selected because they're good at fermentation, not because they were studied to have a specific benefit in a specific dosage in the human body. So I'll give you a great example. We have a specific, and then the second thing, just to, we for all the we call them the Whole Foods people call them like they go like this because it's the human. I'm sure a lot of them in your audience, the people who turn the label around, right? They want to know what's in something. So I'm just going to take everybody back to like 6th grade biology. If you remember the kingdoms of life, there's species and then there's strain, right? And so species, most probiotics are just telling you what species they are, but they don't tell you the strain.
Right.
So having a dog, which you do, but not knowing if it's a lab or a poodle. So you're putting bacteria in your body, and there are strains of the same species that can do completely opposite things in the human body. So the specificity of which strain, which is the first part of the definition, is really important. So in kombucha, kimchi, fermented foods, it's not that there might be good metabolites that come out of the fermentation process that probably, and of course something like kimchi is very fibrous. So I'm not by any stretch, I don't want anyone to be like, damn, a hater. And they're all delicious, but that is not a probiotic. That is not scientifically a probiotic. There's, I think, different kimchis. I think we worked with some scientists at Harvard that took every kimchi off the shelf at Whole Foods, and I think they found between 300 and 500 different species of bacteria. They're very good at fermentation and can this, and there are probably other benefits, maybe especially from fiber. With kombucha, you're probably getting more benefit from the polyphenols from the tea than you are from the probiotic, like having a probiotic effect.
Interesting.
So for us, and when you say like why seed, it's for us, it's not like we're not like it's not about being better than a kombucha company or whatever. We just care about precision and science. And I do think that there's an accountability and a transparency that if you are selling something that someone's going to put in their body, that you must understand what you're saying, and you have an accountability there. So in the EU, for example, or in Japan, which is the EU is regulated, and FOSHU, which is the regulatory body in Japan, where the EU and Japan are probably the two most stringent regulatory bodies in the world. Many of your audience probably knows that from like skincare, for example. Like they don't let you use the word probiotic on a bottle because it has to have such a stringent evidence base to be able to term. But in the US, everyone figured out if you just put probiotic on something, you call something a functional food, you can charge, and people would think they're getting probiotics.
Yeah.
So the next part. So anyway, so I'll stop there because that's at least the definition. So now we know what a probiotic is. But if I can go on, but I want to make sure I answer all your questions.
Oh no, I mean we definitely have. I mean, we have questions that I think will follow. You kind of diving into seed a little bit more. People wanted to know, what bacteria should I be having? If I had probiotics, antibiotics, what bacteria strains? I mean, some of these because my audience is kind of across the board. Some of them are nerdy too, and so they want to know specific strains, and that might be a little bit too much. What else was there? Just like how many billions? Just all of that. So
absolutely. And what we could do for the specific strains part too is like we could follow up with just like our the strains, and I'm gonna also give you some your audience some resources of understand which strains have been studied for what. The one loophole I would say, and this is where I can, toot our own horn, is that the hard thing, and this is the challenge with probiotics and particularly the industry in the US. Just because a strain has been studied for something, it's like adding vitamin C, like a little bit of ascorbic acid or something to like a beverage, and then saying it has vitamin C in it, right? Like you're like, in what amount? Like at what? Like if you vitamin C to have an effect in the body is usually at a pretty high dose, or so it's at what amount? So it's like it's kind of like they just sprinkle in the stuff that's been studied, and you can have a label if you do that. But it doesn't mean that it's in the dose or that it would have any ability to get to the parts of your GI system that would ever be able to have even the effect that was studied. And so there's so many loopholes when you really start like label hacking probiotics in the US.
I bet.
A lot of, so I'd say that I'm happy to answer strains, but strains it's a part of the picture that then gets really perverted when people then just put it in. It's like making a chocolate cake and then like sprinkling a little bit of folic acid and be like, it's a prenatal cake, right? It's like you can't do that. It's not
right.
But that's what
it's true. You're so right. And here, in the US, it's so unregulated. People just throw words onto labels, and they become ad words. It's essentially what it is. I mean, even with gluten-free, I think that once gluten-free became, and my sister is celiac, so we've been working with her gluten allergy, and it's more than an intolerance for her whole life, pretty much, once we figured it out. But once it became a trend, it was like, you saw gluten-free on water, you saw gluten-free on rice. It became an ad word. And I think that it's good to point that out here, that, you to be very mindful about where you see the word probiotic and why. And, with seed's a daily symbiotic, and that's a term that people don't hear, and they don't really know, what does that mean? What is a symbiotic?
Yep. So I'll go to my next definition because it helps us unpack symbiotic. So a symbiotic is very simply a prebiotic and a probiotic. We define probiotic. Let's define prebiotic.
Yeah.
It can work in a couple of different ways. a prebiotic, there's kind of two kinds, and they are fermenting prebiotics and they're non-fermenting prebiotics. So for anyone in your audience that's like on a FODMAP diet, for example, most prebiotics are fermenting, and that's why a lot of people can't tolerate prebiotics because they ferment. They literally create a lot of discomfort for people who have various like GI conditions. So we actually work with non-fermenting prebiotic, and I'll get into how ours works, but there's kind of two distinct kinds. One you could think of as like fertilizer. It is literally just like food for good bacteria to eat and proliferate. The way that a prebiotic is defined is that it is a substrate or a compound that bacteria metabolize. They break it down to make other good stuff that your body, and you may have heard of like metabolites or short chain fatty acids, for example, things like butyrate, propionate, acetate, things like that, urolithin A. There are other, and those, a good example, like butyrate, for example, if a microbe or bacterium probiotic breaks down a prebiotic and makes butyrate. Butyrate is a fuel source for the cells that line your epithelial wall. So there's like a really interesting circularity there. So prebiotics, just to recap, they're just basically be food for good bacteria to just grow, or they can be this thing that they like break down, this compound they break down to make other things that are important and critical for your health. So we work on the second type. And that second type, we work with a compound called punicalgin, which is actually sourced in the skin, that really sour part of pomegranates. That skin your microbes take and break down into a metabolite or short chain fatty acid called urolithin A. And so, anyway, so to go back up a beat, our symbiotic is a probiotic and a prebiotic that is combined and taken in one. And the reason that we have two capsules and they're pretty large is because of what I said earlier, which is that we preserve all of the dosages that were done in the human clinical work to be able to have the same potency and be able to reflect in a one-to-one capacity that we are including the microbes. And it's not just the dosage, it's the fermentation conditions down to the pH in the media. Fermented in. Because if you're not preserving the same conditions, you can't just say that you have that strain in there if you're not also preserving the way that it was studied and then saying that the microbe does the thing that you're claiming. And just to give you, I think you asked a little bit about which strains for which, it really, the specificity is so important because, for example, we have specific strains that like they, and actually one little myth to bust before we get into this. People think about, you hear a lot of words about like restoring or rebalancing or replacing. Probiotics don't work that way. They're transient. They're nomads. They move through your system and they do their work on the way. If you think about it, like it's kind of like throwing sand in a rainforest. It's like the idea that all of a sudden you'd like take something and it would just like take up all of this real estate is very realistic, particularly because digestion unto itself is a very challenging journey for any microbe. Most of it, unless you have, like we have a specific delivery technology that we can demonstrate has 100% survivability through the GI system, which is honestly that's where I will be a good salesperson. It really is extraordinary, and we've tested it against the top 10 to 15 probiotics in the world between here, Australia, UK. And so that is a big deal that we've been able to engineer that. But
it's a huge deal. You guys, we'll take a moment. That's a huge deal. It's a really big deal.
It is a big deal, and something we actually just received our patent, and it is because I think part of why a lot of probiotics may be using the same strains, but they don't have the same outcomes that we do or the same efficacy is definitely a problem of delivery. And when you get into other areas of health, and this is really important for myth busting too, like people who promise you delivery in microbes is half of it, because it's not just, for oral probiotics, but you're going to start to get messaged, and I'm sure your community is super savvy. So like you're probably seeing all kinds of things like probiotic skincare, probiotic toothpaste, probiotics for vaginal or urogenital health that you take orally, which by the way, it's not how it works. have to administer it locally to have a prebiotic impact that way,
Exactly.
or that way. And so, but the delivery of how these things are going to be delivered to different parts of our body, like the more that audiences like yours and that you educate, it lets people be their own detectives, which is so important. And so delivery, like when it comes to the skin, how you're going to deliver a microbe to the skin live is a very big challenge. That's like one of the things, of course, we're working on, and same with the mouth, and same with other parts of the body, because stabilizing and then delivering a microbe is very challenging. They're very, you guys may remember again from high school science, fermentation and anaerobic, like they don't like oxygen,
Right.
And they don't like heat,
Right.
and moisture. And so again, I ask everybody to just think about all the beverages sitting on shelves that tell you they're probiotics, and then you know what bacteria like or don't like, and it makes it hard to believe that they're probiotics.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. Another reason why I love the product so much is because you have a special delivery technology that other brands, and I'm not knocking any other brands. I'm just pointing out that this is a specific delivery technology that seed does offer, and it protects against the stomach acid. It protects against the enzymes, the digestive enzymes in our body, and it protects against bile. And so if you don't mind, I hope I'm not throwing you too off track from if you could just explain to the audience a little bit like what that means and why that's so important and something that they need to be mindful of when they're making choices.
Yeah, of course. And as I said, I mean, look, the science mind in me is like, look, there's so much nuance to this world. And as I said, it really is not meant to knock other companies, right? Like a lot of people take probiotics, and even the ones that die off, like most of them die off, still potentially can have an impact for certain people.
Better than nothing,
Yeah. So I don't, I certainly, it's not, and as like it's so hard to know. So much of this stuff can be correlative with other products and what you change.
Yes, absolutely.
It is very hard to know, and I don't like to knock other companies, but I can talk about what I'm proud of, and I think that what we were able to do is create what is called a dry cap and cap system. And a dry cap and cap system means, like you've probably seen, there's a lot of companies and supplement companies out there that use like liquid buffers, like so that you'll see the cap and cap is not like a new technology. There are other companies that use that, but because we were able to do it in a dry way, our probiotic actually sits in the outer capsule, but it serves actually as a really critical barrier, and shields our very sensitive inner capsule, which is all of the microbes. And then it's in like this larger kind of chlorophyll, kind of green capsule. Mm-hmm. And so what we were able to do and figure out in the right dosage, right amount, right, density of capsule width and size and proportion and ratio and dosage and all the things that kind of go into this, and the way that we test stability is figure out that when it was in this dry format, manufactured in a very specific way, it would actually confer and allow you to deliver 100% of the microbes at the end of the small intestine into the colon, which is extraordinary.
It's extraordinary.
The reason we're able to test that, just so you guys know, because a lot of companies tell you that they have quote unquote survival, is because there's something called, and you guys may have heard of in vitro or in vivo. There's actually something called an ex vivo model, which literally means like outside the body. So there's a company that we work with, and a partner, an academic and a research partner that we work with, that has built a simulation of the human GI system in a room, literally.
Oh,
and
wow.
And can emulate every stage of digestion, gastric juices, bile, enzyme, and then they're able to measure at every stage of digestion the viability, and it's not just for probiotics, of course. They do
for everything,
for different things. And so we were able to put ours through, and then of course put multiple others through to get our survivability, which was really excited, and we'll be publishing on that soon, actually.
Oh, wow. I mean, the nerd in me loves that.
It's like a big room that it kind of looks like right out of a 80s science movie.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to read about that. I don't know if you can share that company now with us, because I'd like to look into it.
Academic lab, actually.
It's a lab.
Academic lab. It was like spun out of the lab. Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty. I mean, not to tone down the science, but that's just pretty awesome that they can do that.
No,
wow.
Look, it's fascinating, and you're also, what you're able to do with it too is you're able to test things in a fasted or a fed state. You feed it food and see how your probiotics behave with food, and or feed it in a fasted state and also see how it. So it's interesting because of course people ask us all the time, like, should I take it with food? Should I eat it on stomach? Things like that. So it is really it is. We're going to start doing more work to understand other things besides probiotics too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's really, I'm so excited. We're going to have to do this again. I'm so excited to learn more. I'm just going to we're going to become tech female buddies. I did have a bunch of questions that came in, male and female, that was basic questions. How do you figure out the dosage? How do you, and on the instructions you say, okay, take one the first 3 days, then you go up to 2, but just for like the average person, let's say they're not yet using seed, they want to go through what they have in their fridge right now. How do people figure out dosage, so to speak?
Well, you're asking that's that beautiful space between science and someone's experience of their own body, right? Which is, we can figure out dosage because of the way that we, like, clinical work happen. The dosage that's done in the clinical work we preserve in the product. The practice, and I think we all know this, right? Like so many brands and products come up with all kinds of different ways to like make something sound scientific, but at the end of the day, like, we can tell you what the research says, but really, like, so much of health is really about understanding like how you need to do something, how you know be able to do it if you did it. So like, sometimes like you have to make that trade-off between what we call compliance, which is literally just like the ritual, like the being able to do something every day, which I think, it's like some of the biggest our problems in human health are human behavior. They're not that we all always don't know. Someone just said this live is stupid. I'm like, this is the beauty of social media. Like,
that's okay. You can jump off. We're having a great time here. All 700 plus of us are having a great time learning, and I have tons of requests for this replay to be aired. So whoever that is, you can enjoy someone else's. We're having fun.
Okay.
But no, I agree. It kind of depends. It's really about every person's different, and it's hard to answer that question. Because there's so many different brands too.
And I think the most important thing we always tell people is, here's what the science says, but like also, like, if it means the difference between you being able to do something every day or not, like, don't overcomplicate it, because it's probably more important that you at least do it. So for example, and the reason that we say a couple, start on this many capsules is nothing to do with the science.
Right.
That is about minimizing discomfort.
Right.
Now, the full dosage, and what I can tell you what the science says, is 2 capsules a day, and that's what we know and what we've studied. The second part of that is like just human behavior, right? Which is that if you can start something, and you can, and then you can like work up to it, and you can minimize your discomfort, you have a higher likelihood of continuing it. And so really, that's not, I wouldn't want to misrepresent that it's scientific. It just came from so much anecdotal feedback of people saying it was a little easier if I acclimate this way up till the full dose. But that's not because like science says like do one this day, do one this way. It really was just more a function of how could we make this more palatable for someone to be able to incorporate and also minimize any discomfort starting it.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense. And it's something that I talked about earlier, before you jumped on, just about, because we have a product called Just Add Water, and this tagline is Simplify Your Self-Care. And so that's really what you guys are trying to do. Is just like, how can we make this relatable, easy to do, something that you can do to take care of yourself. And it's just start with 3, take 2 after that, and then continue on with it, because it's really about consistency. That's really what is going to help you, optimize, amplify, heal your own body. It's the human condition, it's human behavior, right? It's just being consistent. And another thing I love about Seed is that you guys have a perfect program that I put so many clients on, which is just that monthly, subscription. So it shows up so you can't miss it. It's not like you're down to one or two. Oh, I've got to go to the store. Ordering something off of Amazon, it didn't come Prime. It's just that you guys have a subscription that allows that product to show up every single month at the same time, and it's sustainable. So that's another thing that I really love. And so, we didn't even get a chance to talk about how much impact your company is making, not just on our bodies, but also on the earth body, and our environmental health. And so we still have a few minutes. If you could just share a little bit, because I think that's so important for people to know when they're making choices.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. And yes, it is human behavior, and like we're the first for people to say too. And you're a better salesperson than I am, but we are the first people to say also, like, if it means the difference financially between taking our product or eating like a plant-based diet, like I'd much rather somebody make the right dietary choices and nutritional. But thank you for being a great salesperson. Microbes in the human microbiome, there's a soil microbiome, there's a microbiome of our of the entire environment, and when you work in biology or ecology, that everything is connected. Our bodies and earth, and the idea that we think we're somehow separate when we think about climate change and all these is just like kind of a ludicrous idea that certainly is not serving us. And so one of the things that we care a lot about is thinking about how we steward also the research that we do, but also for the environment. So our first probiotic for honeybees was published, I think, a couple of years ago. We've published a number of times since, but we created a probiotic for honeybees. It's a biopatty that you put in the hive, and it mitigates the impact of neonicotinoid pesticides. Really interesting, really important. Bees are incredibly impacted.
Wow.
And then our next project, which I'm sneak peek here, we're about to launch it and announce it in May. Our probiotic program in the environment is a probiotic for coral reefs. Microbes probiotic applied to coral reefs could actually mitigate the changes that coral reefs are dealing with so making them more temperature resistant. And so that's really, we're going to announce, we'll talk more about that in May, but we're really excited about that. And then lastly, because you talked about our packaging, like one of the most important things that we really thought about early was not just like subscription, which by the way allows us to make the product, which would normally probably be almost like twice what it costs today, more affordable. But it also, because it is not inexpensive to make, and we do not have enjoy the margins that many other companies in our space do. So subscription is a means by which we can offer it at a more affordable price. But also the packaging, it comes only once with a jar, and then all of our packaging, we do a tremendous amount of work with biomaterials and people pursuing kind of new sustainable materials and packaging, and we're iterating and evolving that all the time. On our own bioplastic now, and we're also thinking about how microbes will make new materials in the future. And so I think, and also we created in the welcome kit, it comes with this, like, I thought I had one here. It's kind of like this little.
Yes, I have it. The travel.
And that was designed because a lot of people, when they travel, they break their health routines.
Yeah.
So we really, or they use little plastic bags. And so we really replace like single-use plastic, but also wanted to create an experience where, when you're traveling, you're going away for the weekend, you're traveling somewhere, you just kind of can always have it with you. And because of our delivery system, our probiotics do not have to be refrigerated. And so you really can carry them anywhere, but it makes them shelfable, which is another benefit. I think a lot of people think probiotics refrigerated are somehow better, but that's also another kind of myth.
Yes, no, and I'm so glad you brought that up. And I just wanted to show everyone, because we have a few minutes, I just wanted to show everyone how the products look like in case you didn't see it on my story. So this is your travel size, which I love. And then this is what the month's worth comes in. And so, and I just, I truly love everything that you guys do. I love everything you've created. I love the products, and I've been using this and, talking about it. I don't talk about it live all the time, but, it's what I've been talking about and sharing with my clients, for the last few years now. And so, you guys, I know that, and I just want to acknowledge again the audience. So first, Thank you, Ara, for coming on today and just sharing us so much wisdom. It's so important for people to really know and understand. Oh, and I love this. Hi, Trisha. So thank you. Hi, healthy girls. So I just want to acknowledge the audience for being so amazing, for staying on here and always being so participatory. And I know that sometimes we have funny messages that come on, but it's amazing how you guys are just so supportive and acknowledging the information that's coming through and our amazing guests and sharing the love for it. So, the link is in my bio. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, if in case you miss it, I have a discount for, my beautiful community if you guys want to use that. But I just want to let you know, there people have said, I love seed. Where else? I love this product. Been taking it for months. Love everything that you do. Environmental health is environmental justice. You're just the best. Your company is wonderful. So just wanted to share with you some of the beautiful comments that flew by. And you guys, again, the link is in my bio. It's Serena15, and most importantly, on my pinned comment on the bottom here is Ara's Instagram account and also Seed's Instagram account. So go follow and just look up the information. There's still so much. We only kind of did some of the basics here, but there's so much for you to know, and that knowledge is empowering. The most important thing here, I think, for both of our companies and what we believe and what we say, our mission is just to really empower you to have the right information to make the right choices for you. So I think that I know there's more questions too, and we're already coming up to about the hour. So can we send you DMs?
Yes, please send me DMs, and also send them to Seed as well, because we have a whole SciCare team, which is our short name for scientific care.
Yes.
Who answers all kinds of, I see people saying sold out, but
yes, I think the link that I had put up, I had gotten messages about it that it was sold out, which is a great thing, but you guys go ahead and pre-order.
Go ahead and pre-order, and it should ship actually very shortly. So thank you, and thank you for your patience. We seem to be impacting more microbiomes than we thought, but we will absolutely be able to fulfill all of those in the coming weeks. And please do email Seed with any of and DM us at Seed with any of your questions, because our team absolutely loves answering them, and loves making sure that you guys have all the best information. And thank you so much, Serena. Your energy and the way you clearly care so much about your community is really beautiful. So
you're so welcome. Thank you so much, and thank you guys. I think a lot of people already got knocked off, but thank you so much. And I will message you soon. Thank you, Ara. Okay.
Awesome.
Bye bye.
Here.